You know what Andromeda's main problem is? Too much space. Okay. Video. Mass Effect Andromeda, a game plagued with issues from beginning to end. Absolutely demolished by both the press and players when it launched, and for good reason. This game was a buggy, broken mess, full of tired faces.
Sorry, my face is tired from dealing with everything.
But is it still? Did they fix anything? Did it even deserve all the hate it got in the first place, or was it a case of people seeing the clips and drawing conclusions? Let's talk about that. Spoilers for Mass Effect Andromeda, obviously, and just in case EA shareholders are watching, you're going to HE double hockey sticks for ruining so many games. Gather round the fire, and let me tell you a tale. And I can't talk about the game without first telling you about the story, so let me try to do so in the quickest way possible. The game opens with our departure from Earth and subsequent arrival in the Andromeda Galaxy about 600 years later on the Hyperion Arc as part of the Initiative. A group of people looking to resettle in Andromeda. You wake up as one of the Ryder siblings, daughter or son of the Pathfinder, Alec Ryder. As the Pathfinder, it's Alec's job to go and find paths on our future planet in this galaxy. Before that can happen, though, our ark is hit by a strange space phenomenon, later known as the Scourge, that damages part of our vessel, as well as the hibernation pod of the Ryder sibling we didn't choose to play. We help fix the ship as much as we can, then join our dad and the captain on the bridge, where our golden world comes into view. Habitat 7. What was supposed to be our new Earth. Unfortunately, it doesn't look anything like our initial scans. Instead, it looks devastated. The atmosphere in ruins. Out of options, we have to land anyway. So Dad takes us and a few other members to the planet's surface. Of course, everything goes wrong on the way, too. Our shuttle crashes, everyone's scattered, and while we try to get the team back together, we run into our main enemy of the game, the Ket. The Ket are interested in the magical alien technology du jour, and so we have to go look at it. When we do, our dad uses his super AI called Sam to activate it immediately. The device, called a Vault, seems to clear the atmosphere, but it also blows up a little, causing our dad to make the tough choice to save us over him when our helmet breaks. In the process, he also gives us his AI, Sam, who somewhat merges with our brain, because it does, and it is now part of us, body and soul, and can talk to us directly. The Ket are not happy.
Oh, you're copying what he's doing. But you don't have Sam. And the reason it worked is Sam. Ah, yeah, so they want to use it, but they don't know how we did it!
Meanwhile, we arrive at the Nexus, what's supposed to be our central hub for the Andromeda Galaxy. Once again, it's not what we expected. The arcs for the other species, Asari, Salarian, Turians, and Quarians, don't seem to be around, and we're not getting a human response and transmission either, only an automated one. Upon entering, it turns out that there is a crew manning the station. It's just a skeleton crew, working with next to no energy. As they can now use our arc to power the Nexus, though, the lights are literally turned on again. That won't last forever, so we're sent out to pathfind on some other planets to attempt the same thing our father did on the first planet. Fix the atmosphere and establish outposts. At this point, we can run around and pick up several side quests, but I'll be talking about side quests later down the road. For now, let's focus on the main story. We're given a ship, the Tempest, and another crew member, and we're off to Eos, our first target for settlement. It's a sandy mess full of corpses, Anakin's worst nightmare. The Initiative had tried to build an outpost here before, and in one of its abandoned buildings, we find a guy who tells us about cars, and how useful they are on large, empty planets. So we decide to pick up our own car, the Nomad, a vast improvement on Mass Effect 1's Mako, and drive off to activate this planet's vault. Each planet has a vault, and to open its entrance you have to first activate the monoliths on the planet, 3 each. This is the main thing you need to do to make any planet viable for a potential outpost. While investigating our first monolith on Eos, we run into another future party member. She's been studying the Remnant, as she calls them, the aliens who build the monoliths and vaults. And my best guess is that the entire galaxy was simultaneously eavesdropping when she said that, or she's lying, because from this point forward, everyone, everywhere, calls these aliens Remnant. We take her with us, punch some Ket in the face, meet another future companion, and find a map to more vaults. We're now also able to set up a settlement on Eos because the atmosphere is mostly okay, and this opens up the do whatever you want part of the open world. The Ket, meanwhile, just want to know how we do the vault thing, but we don't want to tell them, so we bravely run away to another planet called Aya that houses another new alien race, the Angara. They don't like us either. We get a meeting with the Angara leader, Evra, who is upset in general, not just at us, and we ask him about vaults, but he can't help us. And the only person who could, their Moshai, another important leader, had been captured by the Ket. So our new objective becomes saving the Moshai. First, we must win the Angaran trust by side-questing a little, so we do that. Phone Evra from our space phone, and then we leave to save the Moshai. She's being held in an important Ket facility where we discover that the Ket are abducting Angara to turn them into Ket. They call it exaltation, and it's basically the Borg from Star Trek. Complete assimilation. The Ket, as a species, move from galaxy to galaxy to find new creatures to pick apart, absorb their most interesting qualities, and then assimilate into the Ket as shock troopers, taking their free will in the process. Our job is to save the Moshai from that fate, and upon saving her, we can choose to either save the rest of the Angara as well, or destroy the facility forever, keeping the Ket from exalting more Angara here. Either way, we bring the Moshai home, and she commits to helping us find our next vault on Aya. This vault shows us a place called Meridian, the control center of all the vaults. The Archon already knows the location of Meridian, and it's why he wanted the Moshai, to help him use it, because he couldn't. It now becomes a race to Meridian to try and activate it using Sam. Our next stop is the Archon's private relic collection to find a relic that shows us the exact location of Meridian. Thankfully, it turns out that the Moshai was kidnapped through the help of an Angaran traitor, and through that traitor we managed to work out the Archon's location. At the Archon ship, we find that he's also captured the Salarian Ark, another race from our original home that left to settle in Andromeda. Our team now begins a daring rescue/heist operation where we attempt to save both the Salarians and obtain the MacGuffin. We do so, but not before landing in a trap set by the Archon for a hot minute, where he injects us with MacGuffin juice so we temporarily die to get out of his trap and see our life flash before our eyes, but because of the juice, the Archon sees our life flash before his eyes too, and now he knows the secrets of Sam. Apparently. His second in command, meanwhile, says he's wasting his time with Meridian. We leave with the map to Meridian, tell the Nexus leadership about it, get blocked by bureaucracy, band together with whatever other Pathfinders we can find, give our ship stealth technology, and leave to find Meridian anyway. Meridian, which seems to just be a giant empty spaceship, where we offhandedly find out that the Remnant created the Angara before we activate the main hub and the Ket arrive to take our new toy. We win, only to find out that the Meridian we're on was just the box that held the real Meridian. The Ket still try to destroy us with their warships outside, but we use the Meridibox's defenses to destroy them and return home victorious. Somewhat. The leadership, who previously told us we can't go and play at Meridibox, apologizes for being a stick in the mud and promises to help us find Meridian a little harder this time around. Suvi says, "Listen, I have a MacGuffin thought that can help us find the real Meridian. Something the Scourge is like the sea." We say, "Okay, do that," and she does so. We find the coordinates to Meridian, punch them into Meridibox, and intend to fly the whole thing to real Meridian. The data tells us that Meridian is a self-contained seed world that, when reactivated, will also affect every connected planet because it's the heart of the Volt network. But, as we find it, the Archon interrupts by attacking our SAM unit in its home base. He does his little threatening speech as we limp towards the door. Everything goes black, and we skip to our sibling who woke up earlier and who is now being instructed by Sam to fix my SAM implant. We weakly stumble our way to our goal and fix the main character, who wakes up and is now somewhat able to access remnant technology without Sam. The Archon takes our sibling to use their implant to activate Meridian, and he's very upset when we show up with the Meridibox too. He opens up real Meridian, and inside is a lovely little forest with some mountains and foliage and such. And this is the big get everyone together moment where all the allies you helped during side quests show up to kick ass, so we can punch through to the Archon's new hideout. We don't technically fight the Archon ourselves, we just disable his outlets because he needs 5G to function. Oh, and he has a giant worm. We punch that too. Stop it, get your mind out of the gutter. Upon defeat, we activate Meridian for realsies, and life blooms everywhere as we walk off, potentially with whatever love interest we chose. After the credits roll, we get a short outro scene with the Primus, the Archon's second-in-command, looking menacingly at Meridian and walking away into a ship that's clearly on power-saving mode because all the lights are off. For effect. And that is the main story of Mass Effect Andromeda. Just going through the main story while ignoring side quests actually makes for a great, well-paced little mystery. I had a lot of, okay, but what happens next moments, and that's exactly what I want out of a story. Of course, once you intersperse that main quest with the open world side quests, it unfortunately slows to a snail's pace and loses a lot of momentum, as well as the fact that the mystery aspect of the main story doesn't resolve quite entirely. When I go through the main beats like this, it seems like it has a lot of holes. I already noticed a few while streaming the game, but listing it off just made it worse. The main problem Andromeda has was added by design. A focus on future content. The main story of Andromeda spends a lot of time introducing new things, and not enough time explaining the things they already introduced. And that starts with the literal introduction of the game. You're leaving Earth, leaving the Milky Way, and then you wake up ready to go. I vaguely believe that they wanted to mirror Mass Effect 1's opening to a point. The problem is, Mass Effect 1 treats itself like it's the first in the series. Because it is. Andromeda is technically also a first in the series, but it does not treat itself as such. It assumes you already know a lot about the Mass Effect universe, and because it wants to push an open world, it dispenses with the introductions in a lot of cases. After the initial opening cinematics to 1, we have two characters banter for a while, Joker and Kaidan. We immediately get a read on the type of people they are based on this small interaction, as well as a hint about the Spectres. Andromeda's intro isn't necessarily bad. In fact, I really like the big space opera setting, but I wish they'd started a little smaller in order to build up later characters. The majority of our companions hail from the Milky Way, and it would have been nice to see them say farewell to their homes during the opening sequence. It would have lent a little more gravity to later conversations we have with them as well. Given the confusion of some fans, it might have even been a good moment to add some cameos from the older games, like a passing of the torch. During a side quest in Andromeda, we actually learn that Alec Ryder, our father, knows about the Reapers, even though everyone else on the mission doesn't. The intro cutscene could have alluded to that, making it a good pickup on replay and a nice moment of mystery otherwise. Because right now, side quests aside, our father shows up, dies, and hands us a MacGuffin. Other characters ask you how you feel about your father's death, and I feel nothing. I have to guess that my character might feel something because I don't even know the guy. We're told about the guy, but that's not the same. Mass Effect 1 was a lot more self-contained in a lot of ways. Yes, it ended on a massive cliffhanger, but it was one of only a few. Andromeda is riddled with them, left, right, and center because it's so much bigger and has so much more side content. You know, on account of the open world. I know I turned it into a joke in the opening, but I do mean it. There's too much space. Andromeda has a lot of planets to visit, but the vast majority you cannot land on, and they also have nothing going on whatsoever. Some entire systems quite literally only have a single mineral deposit to scan for, which begs the question, why bother? There's a really cool looking giant black hole you can visit, But nothing happening there either. And I know what you're thinking. Maybe it had something to do with future DLC. And while I think you have a point there, maybe don't let me visit it until the content for it is in the game, in that case. And you know what? I wouldn't be too particularly upset about these planets that all look eerily similar, having nothing to do, if it didn't make me fly there each time. If it would just let me scan things from very far away, I would say, wow, that wasn't very useful at all. I could have skipped that entirely and nothing would change. But it also didn't cost me any time, and at least I wasn't bored doing it, so that's okay. How nice of them to let me feel like I'm truly in a very big galaxy with lots of space. I would say all of those words, but I can't say any of that because to fly to a different system, you have to sit through a flight animation each and every time. You can skip the ones within the system itself, but they're still, somehow, tedious. I understand the want to finally express how vast the universe can be, I do. But it's also boring, and maybe you shouldn't have. Because if that was the objective, you should have let me fly my ship. Not cutscenes, active gameplay. Let me explore the galaxy instead of teleporting. There are, per the wiki, 168 planets to look at, but you can only set foot on 7, and one of those is the tutorial planet. One of the main things we do throughout the game is going into vaults to restore the atmosphere of any particular planet. Now, I don't need to tell you that in an open world game, this will be relatively similar each time. It's part and parcel of open world games. But because this is a Mass Effect game, I, along with others, would assume that doing the most will have some sort of effect on the eventual end mission. So I went and did all of the vaults. However, I did most of them off stream, for the most part, because I didn't want to make my audience sit through the same architecture with the same enemies, where I did the same thing each time over and over again. You go to a planet, you grab your car, drive to the first tower to find some glyphs and play Sudoku. Repeat twice more, then go to the vault. Fight a bunch of robots, do a little jumping, activate the vault, run away, and next. They tried their best to add a little bit of variance each time, but they really didn't have much to work with. And that goes for the planet's fauna too. I actually think the planets look neat. Flora-wise, we're there. I think they could have been smaller, but I've no doubt that the upper echelons decreed that a planet shall be yay big and not a centimeter smaller. There's an ice planet present as well, but I'm abnormally resentful of any and all ice planets ever since I played Star Wars: The Old Republic, so I won't hold that against them. And while their jungle planet is a nightmare to traverse, I do appreciate the aesthetic a lot. Dense foliage, perpetual night, it has an innate air of mystery about it that I really like. And the Angaran homeworld, Aya, looks amazing when you fly in. So it's a pity that the enemies have a severe case of copy-paste once again. The first time I saw the dinosaur model, I thought they were very cool, until I realized that they appeared on more than one planet. As did all the other enemies. That's not to say the enemies aren't neat. I still think they're neat. I just wish there was more variety. And the fact that the dinosaurs have apparently mastered space travel worries me. As far as our ship's environment, it's okay. I like the Pathfinder's room a lot. I'm partial to the Normandy, but I'm fairly certain that's nostalgia talking and the fact I like the black aesthetic over the white aesthetic of the Tempest. Because the Tempest is a cool ship. I think it's neat. It's sleek and pretty easy to navigate for anyone who isn't me. I also like that the crew walks around constantly. They're not stuck in their little section of the ship all of the time. They hang out near the mission desk so they can make sure I pick up my resources like a good little Pathfinder. We'll talk about that later, don't worry. The only thing that struck me as quite odd is the lack of crew members. We have our own companions, of course, but as far as actual crew on the ship, we have a pilot, a doctor, an engineer, and a science officer. And that's it. The Normandy had a pretty large crew, which makes sense to have given it's a highly advanced spaceship. So that's odd. Anyway, characters. We have a main team of 6 companions to play with, starting with your initial 2 humans, Cora Harper and Liam Costa. They are the humans of the team and therefore very basic. Cora was supposed to take over as Pathfinder when your father died, and she's a little upset about it, but not to the point where it has any impact on our mission. She also trained her biotic powers alongside the Asari, and she just won't shut up about it. Liam is the optimistic hothead who keeps breaking the rules. The third member we recruit is veteran Nyx, a Turian with a shady past who has connections everywhere and with everyone. Fourth is Pelisaria Basail, also known as PB, who is an Asari of the annoying archetype, so I obviously related heavily. Next is Nakmor Drak, a Krogan who thinks humans are losers, and he's right, so he should say it. And finally, Jal Amadarav, an Angaran resistance soldier who is capable of the one thing no other companion is, openly talking about his feelings. Drak was by far my favorite. He's very blunt, and his companion quest was both funny and engaging. He's stern, but with a very secret, very well-protected heart of gold. He wants what's best, mostly for the Krogan race, but he's willing to tough it out for the greater good no matter what. I thought he was the worst at the start, but he grows on you like a fungus. A very loud, endearing fungus. I had much the same experience with PB as well. Yes, she's very annoying at the start, definitely the know-it-all archetype, but again, her companion quests make her a lot more sympathetic. She really is trying to help, she just doesn't know how to behave socially. Jal is also a wonderful character, very soft-spoken, but one of his first lines, and I'm paraphrasing here, is something along the lines of, "If you don't behave, I can always murder you in your sleep." Which really spoke to me. I genuinely grew quite fond of basically everyone on the crew. Cora and Liam truly remain relatively basic. It's not that I don't think they could be good characters, they just don't really get anything to work with. Like, for some reason, most humans in the Mass Effect series. Cora's mission deals with the Asari arc, and because of that, it focuses more on the Asari involved than on Cora herself and her emotions surrounding it. Liam's mission seemed more like a regular side mission in a lot of ways than a companion mission. But Vetra was the one I chose to romance personally, purely because I have a thing for the unavailable types, and the romance was very just okay. Vetra's entire thing is her sister Sid. Sid wants to do big grown-up things, and Vetra doesn't think she's ready. It's the overprotective sister archetype. The main takeaway in the end is that Vetra gives Sid more room to grow, and it shows the biggest problem I have with all of the companions. They are not given room to grow, and the problem is that this is the first game in the trilogy they'd projected. So yes, I'm going to compare it to Mass Effect 1 again, because this is the Mass Effect 1 of the Andromeda trilogy. Or it would have been. In 1, we have 3 potential romances, technically 2 per playthrough, Ashley or Kaidan, depending on your shepherd, and Liara for everyone. That's it. You have 3 other squad members, but companion missions weren't really a thing yet, so while you got to know them to a point, and they did have small companion missions, the game didn't emphasize going out with them specifically, and the Mass Effect 1 DLC was pretty basic too. Definitely no added characters. They were more in the background. Then in Mass Effect 2, the emphasis on your squad members was very heavy. True loyalty missions were added that you were strongly advised to complete, and the game came with an impressive amount of DLC. Andromeda tried to start with Mass Effect 2. That's the problem. It assumed that DLC would be added in the future to build on what they started with the first game. Mass Effect 2 was already pretty quick to release DLC. Mass Effect 3 quite literally launched with DLC already purchasable, DLC that included a very important squad mate. And then Andromeda launched not with DLC, but with the promise of DLC baked into the main game. DLC that never happened. Now we have this giant open world filled with characters, each with their own small dialogue, and all of that had to be created in a relatively small window of time. There were too many characters for all of them to get the love they deserve. And weirdly, perhaps because of this, one of the more fleshed out romances is with a character that isn't even part of your crew, called Reyes Vidal. And it really is a shame because I really do like our squad. Walking around the ship, you sometimes get little bits of dialogue over the intercom that do a really good job showing off the dynamic between characters and their own personalities. The out-in-the-field banter is back again too, and as long as Sam doesn't interrupt them, they're very enjoyable as well. I would have loved to see where they would take these companions in the long run. And then there's the enemies. The Ket. They are not intimidating. They want to be. They really want to be. Especially the Archon. But they're not, really. They're kind of cute, honestly. Their design just seems like a bunch of humans wearing funky rubber suits, and really, that's my main complaint with a lot of sci-fi races to begin with. A lot of aliens are just humans with different skins. Feet and legs in the same positions, eyes, mouth, nose, ears, all same place, same time. The Mass Effect universe does have interesting new races, like the Hanar. It's just that most of them are not that interesting. Not to mention that the Ket's thing is, once again, taking a race and mutating it. The Reapers already did that, and the cat leader's inability to use his words doesn't help either. He keeps repeating that he won't explain what he's doing, or what he wants, or how anything works, because we wouldn't understand it. Except his plans seem extremely straightforward when he actually executes them. Take over the universe, absorb everyone. And speaking of dialogue, what a segue. Full disclosure, this entire video was initially just going to be a video about dialogue systems in general, except I then wrote that video, recorded the whole thing, listened back to it, and realized I was mostly just talking about the Mass Effect system. And that's because they might not have started it, but they did popularize it, and I can't forgive them for that because now 90% of RPGs of this kind have dialogue scenes that turn out like this. Hello. Hello. Name, age, and occupation. Portobello Mushroom, 348, professional Pong player. Hopes and dreams? To Pong on every planet. Any particular background story you want to tell? I come from a long line of battle-hardened veterans who, as you might imagine, fought in many wars that have no relation to... Yes, the staring into the distance dialogue system is back, and because everyone's face is tired, it didn't really improve much. But to tell you the truth, the written dialogue itself wasn't really my problem. Going into this game, I was constantly warned about the cringe present in every scene, but really, the game has a pretty good sense of humor in most places. Are there a few cringe lines? Sure, but what game doesn't miss the mark every once in a while? Maybe it's just because I am cringe and I am free myself, but I didn't mind the writing. I had a very good time with it. Dialogue in Mass Effect has always been both the best and the worst thing. You could get away with it in the older entries, sticking with the same thing over and over, I mean. We engage in conversation, we stare at each other while opening our mouths rhythmically, and then we move on with our day. But 2017 was the year of Zelda Breath of the Wild, of Resident Evil 7, Hellblade, and Cuphead. Innovative nonsense was going on everywhere. Andromeda almost seemed to have gone backwards. Even in some very important dialogue, the main thing we see move is the face. Except the face doesn't have that many movements, so no one ever has particularly intense emotions. It ranged from vaguely amused to vaguely annoyed. This obviously wasn't aided by the Frostbite engine. After all, it was mainly used for FPS games initially, but Dragon Age Inquisition didn't have nearly this much of a problem. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into the development hell they went through. Apparently the majority of the game was built in only 18 months, and that's one hell of a thing. But I do want to mention that it was, according to a former BioWare employee, BioWare's choice to use the Frostbite engine, not EA's. The Eclipse engine they'd been using previously wasn't going to work out for the things they wanted to add in future games. Specifically, an open world and multiplayer. Now, between us, I'm not saying I think EA mainly wanted that big open world, but that's neither here nor there. What we're left with is an engine that didn't have enough experienced developers available to work on the project full time. And that's how you get tired faces.
My face is tired.
Dialogue like this needs a change, a genuine shakeup. It makes no sense to walk up to someone and ask them about their most intimate trauma cold turkey.
They aren't just conquerors or slavers. They can't turn everything you are to their advantage.
Good morning to you too, Cora.
The Roka go to Kadara and recruit the desperate. I've heard a Roka recruiter weaving his magic. Even I was convinced.
Is this how we always open conversations? I feel like that's a weird way to open a conversation. Personal. I'm gonna go.
The dialogue wheel in general isn't doing anyone any favors either. Initially, BioWare RPGs, as well as most other RPGs, would write out their main character's answers in full. There was no voice acting, so you had to, really. Now that there are voice actors, however, it wouldn't make sense for them to write out the answer and for the VA to then voice that exact answer. What's the point? So instead, the sleek dialogue wheel gives us an idea of what our character might say. The problem is, not all of our brains make the same connections. If the dialogue wheel's answer to, "Would you like tea?" is, "Yes, please," "No, thank you," or maybe later, in a BioWare RPG, you could still be surprised by the eventual sentence coming out of your character's mouth. "Would you like tea?" "I would love some tea and to start a romantic relationship with you right now. Yes." Having this many people to talk to also doesn't help in this scenario. More and more video games of this kind devolve into checking in with each of your companions at the end of a mission to see how they felt about it. Most won't say anything groundbreaking, but you never know, so you go and do it anyway, just in case. It makes talking, the main draw of the Mass Effect story, kind of a drag. That's not to say there are no interesting conversations, absolutely there are, but they could be vastly improved by more dynamic scenes. A lot of important companion conversations do have those. There's a very fun scene with PB in a gravity chamber. It immediately makes the dialogue more memorable because it stands out from the rest. But it doesn't have to be as dramatic as a gravity chamber, just have the characters move more in general. Instead of a static pose, just walking back and forth would help. Hand movements, shoulder shrugs, head rolls, anything really. And for Geralt's sake, if you can't make the faces emote, don't launch the game yet. When your game has so many dialogue scenes, you have to keep them interesting, otherwise everything around it falls flat. Maybe this is why the next Dragon Age is taking so long. They're surely thinking about finally switching up the formula. Anyway, gameplay. I love the combat. It's such an improvement, and the main thing I love about it is that I'm no longer stuck to the floor. In fact, I spend very little time on the ground at all. We have a jetpack now, and it's glorious. You can go anywhere, anytime, even places they didn't think I should be. Nonetheless, I was there. Not only did I have a jetpack, I also had flying Fists of Fury. You can technically opt to not spec into Fists of Fury, but who would ever do that? You want to spec into more gun again? Stop. Become the Flying Fist. I was very rarely huddling behind a chest-high wall during this game. Now, if only Sam could shut up about the temperature changes, we'd be golden.
Be quiet, Sam. I'm killing people.
Yes, in general, the questing is still go to point A, talk or shoot, now go to point B and talk or shoot. But honestly, until I have a tangible idea on how to make it better, I can't really comment. It's RPG questing. Now, the way you go about traversing planets to do the questing is vastly improved also through use of the Nomad, our new all-terrain vehicle. It's like the Mako, Mass Effect 1's all-terrain vehicle, except better in every single conceivable way. Because the Mako seemed to only be all-terrain as long as all that terrain was a flat surface. Several times I actively tried to flip myself over into an impossible position, but somehow the Nomad got me out in one piece anyway. The Mako could never. The Nomad can also go fast and jump and look like a bar of gold for no particular reason. Everything about getting places is great, outside of the long obnoxious loading screens that people even made a mod for to skip, but outside of that, great times. Ignore the UI, it's fine. Ignore the side quests, also, it's fine. Okay, maybe not entirely. Look, there are side quests that are worth doing, of course. The ones related to your companions are definitely fun and interesting for the most part. And there are a few missions on each planet that are also worth doing even if their story doesn't have a particularly big impact. But there is another list of quests called additional tasks in your logs too. Additional tasks are just as they seem, in effect, meaningless. Usually just notes and emails or a small bit of dialogue as the main reward. Could they add flavor to the world? Yes, absolutely, and they do in a way. I just don't think they should have been quests. They would have been better suited as sudden events that don't require you to go out of your way to complete either. Flavor can't be tedious or it doesn't work. Andromeda also has a few side things that you can do, like research pods and strike teams, both fire and forget type systems that have you wait in real world time for them to produce anything. You just visit a computer every hour or so to pick up your materials and such. I didn't like this concept in Dragon Age Inquisition, and I didn't like it here. If I wanted to wait for things to produce more things, I would play a copy-paste mobile game. Technically, it also has multiplayer, but... moving on. You can also do the scanning of the planets previously mentioned, as well as scan everything around you to gather research points that you can then use to research new weapons and armor, which you can then eventually craft. I only ever crafted the N7 armor because I think it's neat, but really it's pretty unnecessary. The game itself throws enough gear your way that you do not need to bother with any of it, just like the choices. Another perfect segue. They don't really matter. Okay, but they mostly don't. One of the problems I have with the choices, at least the bigger ones, is that they seem to have a correct answer. Let me show you what I mean while we go over the major choices throughout the game. First, choosing to build a science or military outpost on your first planet. The effect is that sometimes people will say that you did that, and apparently there's a military squad that helps you in the final mission if you chose the military outpost only. Destroying the cat facility that held the Moshai in order to ensure no Angara will ever be kidnapped there again, or let it stand so the currently held Angara can be set free. The effect of destroying the facility is that you get to say that you did that to yourself in real life, because no one in the game really cares. But if you leave it operational, you gain aid from the Angaran resistance in the final mission. Another choice is between saving the Solarian Pathfinder or a group of Krogan scouts. You'd think saving the Pathfinder would be paramount to our mission, right? Wrong. If you choose to save the Pathfinder, she lives and that's it. You get to say that you did that. If you choose to save the Krogan scouts, you get a team of Krogan scouts and appoint a new Pathfinder. It's just that easy. There is a mission where you can talk to the Primus, the Archon's second in command who's trying to start an uprising. They can give you a kill code to disable their ship during the final battle so you don't have to fight them. You can reject that code. It does nothing, but you get to say that you did that. Or you can use the code and fight less cat. And finally, we have the big decision that makes the most difference. Throughout the game, you can decide to find and save other Pathfinders. The Solarian is obviously part of the main quest, but you have to go out of your way to find the Turian one and convince him to become the new Pathfinder. The Asari Pathfinder is part of Korra's quest, and you have to not mess that up too. If you do have all Pathfinders present, you can save the life of your original ship's captain. Done. Otherwise, she'll die during the final mission while saving the rest of the ship. I think that's neat because it rewards quite a bit of questing on our part, and it made it feel like we needed teamwork to make the dream work. One of the choices in most cases had absolutely no follow-up. I can only assume that these choices would have had consequences in future games, but those games never materialized, so now they're just dead ends. During Korra's loyalty mission, you can choose to let the initial Asari Pathfinder go. If you do, you can later find out that she took all of her stuff and left. I absolutely believe we would find her again in later DLC or games if you make this choice. Andromeda just wasn't given the opportunity. The Solarian Ark, as it turns out, was sold out to the Ket in order to gain intel on the Ket for a future war. You have the choice to take the intel gained or arrest the person responsible. And there the quest cuts off, once again without consequences. These are all very interesting setups that I would have loved to see play out. Which brings us to the conclusion. Segue, yeah! Mass Effect Andromeda is one giant setup. I've been comparing it to Mass Effect 1 throughout this video, but in a lot of ways that's not fair. Because at this point, they'd already made the original Mass Effect series. Mass Effect 1 had its own ridiculous problems, like the Council.
Commander, we owe you a debt the size of infinity plus 1. Never will we be able to repay the great sacrifice humanity has made today. And we owe you, personally, a great personal debt. To you, personally. You saved the lives of everyone in the universe ever.
A few moments later.
Council, the Reapers that I saved you from in the first game are back, and I need your help. Oh, the Reapers, of course, yes. Chef's been boozing it up again. The Reapers, of course.
Not to mention it ended on quite literally a giant cliffhanger, but you're supposed to learn from previous work. Instead of doing the exact same thing and making the exact same mistakes, the next game was supposed to do better. Andromeda is too much like Mass Effect 1 in that it makes the exact same mistakes. Except, it's also using a wonky engine in order to facilitate an open world. It wasn't worth it. If they wanted this to work, they should have made every side quest worthwhile. They should have had satisfying conclusions to each, even within the confines of this game alone. They can still have larger ripple effects in future games, but a game also has to stand on its own. And this is a trend that I've abhorred in every type of media these days because it's everywhere. Media that's built to become another series instead of a great standalone piece of entertainment. Stop it. Stop assuming you're getting an extended universe. And it's not like every quest has an entirely open ending. There are some quests that will end in a character moving to one of your settlements. Some change dialogue or add characters to various cutscenes. It's not like they didn't want to do it. They have done it. They just didn't have the time or resources to do it everywhere. That's the red thread of Andromeda. They wanted to do it, they did it in some places, but they couldn't do it everywhere or as well as they would have liked. Andromeda's story is that of, oops, almost. There is so much about the story that had me incredibly curious. Every single big mystery in this game is left unresolved. The Ryder twins' mother, as it turns out, is still alive, even though the twins thought she died years ago. Alec, our father, had put her into cryosleep to put her disease on hold so he could look for a cure in the Andromeda galaxy. The Quarian Ark, another group of Milky Way settlers, was lost entirely, and the end of the game alludes to its location, but we don't get to go there because the Ark doesn't want to be found. The Primus in general now rallying more troops to Andromeda, the fact that Ket slave camps exist that we never visit or liberate either. There's a mysterious benefactor who set up the entire Andromeda initiative to run from the Reapers, but we don't find out who this benefactor is. A cool black hole we can visit but do nothing with, the creators of the remnant technology, the Jardan, and whatever race they were at war with that created the Scourge in the first place. In fact, that one could have an interesting thread related to the Ket too. The Ket exalts species, and each species has a different appearance when exalted. The Ket we see the Angara turn into is the basic enemy type, so it would go to follow that the majority of the Ket we fight are ex-Angara. But the Cardinal, a boss enemy type, mentions that they were once a different race as well, so that begs the question, what does a real Ket look like? Is the Archon a true Ket, or is it just a more powerful race exalted by the Proto-Ket? There's also the Archon sword with a different model. Could they be the Jardan, or its enemies? Is that how the Archon found out about Meridian in the first place? Is that why there are so few of them? Was the rest killed before they could reveal their secrets? I already spent a lot of my playthrough speculating on things like this because I love mysteries of this kind. Mysteries that I will now never see to conclusion. As it stands, there are just so many MacGuffins, just an absolutely insane amount of them, and at its helm, Sam, an AI whose abilities are so close to the sci-fi version of a wizard did it that Sam, for all intents and purposes, is a sci-fi wizard. Sam would have likely also been explained in the future. I'm sure it would have aligned with finding out who the benefactor is. Maybe the benefactor is a remnant, because isn't it a little strange that Sam can easily interface with remnant tech? And, oh my god, I wish I could have seen the tension on the Nexus go somewhere. Director Tan clearly has a million different sticks up his ass, and I just want to know why. The entire debate around true AI that the game sets up is interesting even outside of video game boundaries. This game has so many cool, fun ideas in terms of story, and they don't get to finish their setup. What I'm trying to say is, I wish it did get a DLC, and by God, it deserved to get more entries. Yes, Mass Effect Andromeda deserved expansions. It deserved DLC, if it had launched in its current state. I had a few bugs while playing this game, here and there. Some were funnier than others, a few were game-breaking and reload-worthy, but at launch, oh no. At launch, everything was different. To give you a quick list of some of the bugs that were apparently present on launch that I no longer experienced myself. PB holding her gun backwards, the Nomad clipping through the ground and falling into the abyss below forever, various fun game crashes, teammates teleporting on top of you, weird, or rather weirder, run animations, guns not reloading, freezing when walking out of the Tempest docking bay area, invisible enemies, the kind that isn't supposed to be invisible, randomly losing sound, enemies spawning midair and staying there, NPCs stacking on top of each other, making it impossible to interact with the one you want, loading screen freezes, riders or your teammates' voiceovers sometimes having no audio, although I still had this one on rare occasions. Achievement notifications locking the game, NPCs having no hair, and it's not on purpose, emails for quests being sent out before the quest itself is available, making a new writer after your first one, carrying over your old writer's progress, breaking quests and dialogue in the process, and this one isn't a bug, but there also weren't very many customization options for your writer at launch at all. And of course, the Nouveau DRM protection and the EA launcher both came with their own issues. When Cyberpunk 2077 launched broken, it got a lot of flack from the media. But it was allowed to build itself back up, and now people are generally positive about it. Andromeda never got that chance. It launched broken, people made fun of it, and then EA dropped it like a hot potato. Yes, they gave it some fixes, but a lot of it is actually still broken, and once again, fan mods had to come to the rescue. One of the most popular mods is called the MEA Fix Pack, with a description fixes various issues in Mass Effect Andromeda left unresolved by the developers. One to shorten the flight sequences that are, for some reason, unskippable. One to tell Sam to shut up. Andromeda was never given a fair chance to succeed, and that's a shame, because the game isn't bad, it's just okay. Apparently that's a sin in today's media landscape. You're either fantastic or trash, but Andromeda is neither. The dialogue isn't great, but it doesn't kill it. The open world isn't great, but it doesn't kill it. The stories aren't great, but they don't kill it. Andromeda is a very okay game. The trouble is, it was a broken okay game and a very long okay game. And when an okay game is long and broken, it drags. On top of that, it had to establish a bond with characters we'd never met before. I'm sure if this game still had Shepard starring in the lead, alongside the cast we know and love, people would have been more keen to keep it going. But it didn't, so here we are. From what I've seen of the story and characters, I'm confident that I would have loved this series as much as the original trilogy, or at least close to, by the end of the three-parter. Because while I enjoyed Mass Effect 1 a whole lot, I wouldn't have given it a second thought without the rest of the trilogy. Without Mass Effect 2 and yes, even 3, Mass Effect 1 was just fine. Mass Effect 5 is in the works apparently, and the trailer showed off Liara from the original trilogy, and I'm a little sad about that. Not because I don't like Liara, not because I don't want to see more Shep content, but because I would have liked to see more Andromeda content too. I would have liked them to drop their insane open world idea because, my god, am I tired of open worlds that have nothing in them, and I would have liked to see that solid BioWare story and character writing that I love so much. Often corny, but always entertaining. And EA, give your developers the time and resources they need to create stuff. I know that's a lot to ask and it probably won't happen, but here's to trying. Get off your perpetual growth machine and live up to your name at least once every decade. Until another tale finds us.